At some point in life, we all reach that breaking point where stress, overwhelm, or even loneliness, despite being married, can get us down. It's that moment in life where it feels like it's pushing you to the edge of a cliff, and before you know it, you are free falling, spiraling down into a breaking point. I've been there a couple of times, but today I want to share with you two of the lowest moments I have ever been in my life, the lessons I have learned, and how I got myself out of it. These were the moments that tested me, that broke me, and that also reshaped me. The first moment I want to share with you is about being a mother and motherhood. The second one I want to share with you is being a wife, and sometimes we can feel lonely in marriage as well. If you're new here, my name is Julie, and I love to encourage wives on their personal journeys of womanhood and becoming the best wife to their husbands that they can be. If you want to grow, then press that like and subscribe button and let me share with you those two lowest moments. So the first time we brought our son home from the hospital, we had a cot ready for him and everything, like all parents do. And we laid him down, this small little baby of 3 days old, and he looked so small in this big bed. And me and my husband just stood there staring at him and just enjoying the moment. And then he started to cry. And the moment he started to cry, my husband picked him up and he brought him to our bed. And that is where he slept probably for the first 8 months of his life. There is nothing wrong with that. Our babies are in our womb. They want to be close to us. And a lot of people are afraid that the baby will come between you and your husband. But honestly, they sleep a lot during the first few months of their lives. So you have enough time with your husband. And also, the bedroom and the bed is not the only place that you and your husband can be intimate. Okay, I'm just putting that out there. Anyway, so fast forward to him being about 2.5 years of age. I'm a homemaker, I work from home part-time, so I got a nanny to work for me to help me out during the hours that I had to work to look after my son. She was great with him, but when she started to work, she was already pregnant. So I think she worked for about 3 or 4 months and then she had to go on maternity leave. I only saw this as an opportunity to spend more time with my son and to see how things will go if I work and just him being alone. And it worked well. When I had to work, he would just sit by me. He would be quiet most of the times, not always, but he would be quiet, just enjoying being in my presence. But then at a point, he got like super clingy and attached to me, and he didn't want to leave me alone. Wherever I went in the house, move around, he would follow me everywhere. And I kind of thought like, this was okay. I don't mind it because it's my son, and obviously, I too enjoy spending time with him and being around him. But at some time, we do want to have time for ourselves. And I just did not get that time for myself. So it kind of started to overwhelm me of not having a moment of my own. But I was just like pushing through this because obviously you understand your own son just wanting to be with you. But then it transitioned to his nighttime routine. And when I would put him to bed, he didn't want to sleep in his own room anymore. He would scream our ears off if I leave him in the room. And as all mothers know, we end up sitting there next to their cots waiting for them to fall asleep. But my son took like hours to fall asleep. Okay, I'm not joking. And I would just sit there praying because what else am I supposed to do? And I also just saw this as an opportunity to actually take time for the Lord. But the moment when you have to wake up at like 12 p.m., 1 a.m., 3 a.m. in the morning because he's screaming and he just wants to be with you, and you go sit at his cot, it can be emotionally draining. I didn't get enough sleep. He didn't want to leave me for one moment, and I had to sit most of the nights. I would probably sit there next to his cot for about 3 hours. And not 3 hours straight, but between the nights. And I do not do well if I don't get enough sleep. Just because of my heart condition that I have, I get really bad heart palpitations. So it was starting to drain me, not only emotionally, but also like physically. I just couldn't do it anymore. But I didn't know what to do, and my husband didn't know what to do. My son was always happy coming to church with me and going to children's church. But in that time, he also did not want to do that. I could not leave him, and I'm always fine with him coming to church with me, but he was a bit young, so he didn't want to sit still, and he would get cranky, or he would say the music is too loud, the voices are too loud, and then I would end up going to children's church with him, and I also felt like I'm not getting what I want out of church because you're not feeding your soul. You are actually just still pouring into your son and like trying to make sure that he's okay. It just did not work. At that moment, I was tired. I wanted fulfillment. I couldn't get it. I wanted to have time for myself. I couldn't get it. And it was just really starting to drain me. And then one day when I went to church, I took him along. He still didn't want to go to children's church. And I just stood there and everything just became overwhelmed. The moment I would move or trying to see if I can go to church, he would immediately scream. He would immediately start to cry. And that day I just took him, I just walked out of church, I came home, and I just started to cry. I just had a mental breakdown and I just told my husband, like, I am drained. I don't know what to do. I want to fix my son, but I don't know how to fix him because I can't understand what is going on in his mind and in his little heart. And of course, you want to be the comfort for your son, but you can only pour into your son if you are full, and I was running on empty. And again, that week, it was just basically the same. Him not wanting to sleep, him being attached to me sitting at his cot for endless hours during the night, not getting enough sleep. So the next Sunday, when I woke up that morning, it just hit me and I just realized like I needed help. Yes, I was speaking to people. Yes, I was speaking to friends about what was happening, but I wasn't really asking for their help. I was just kind of venting where I am at and what was happening in my life. So that morning, I decided I needed help. I told my husband I'm going to church alone. I went to church. I didn't attend church. I went to church after it started. I went to sit out on the stairs. I phoned, or I think I messaged my friend and I told her I'm at church, but I'm just sitting outside because I'm not even in the mood to attend church at the moment. I'm just broken down completely. She is a wonderful friend. She came and sit with me. I just cried, I think, and just fainted again. But that morning, I selectively chose two people that I knew had, the one lady had 3 children and the other one had 4 children. And I decided that I'm going to go to them and ask them for help because if they have a lot of kids, they would probably have advice. Well, I really went with the hope that they would have advice for me. So when the service ended and we have coffee afterwards, I just went up to the one lady and I just started blurting out everything. And I just told her, like, I need help. Do you have advice? This is what's going on. And she was just so kind. She listened to everything I was saying. She asked me a lot of questions. And at the end, she kind of just analyzed the whole situation and just brought everything into perspective. And her advice and her perception of everything what was going on is she told me that the nanny that was working there, he enjoyed her, she was wonderful, and all of a sudden she was just gone. And this could have maybe inserted a fear within him that it could maybe happen to me as well, his mom just disappearing. Because he didn't understand, I never actually thought about speaking to my son, even at 2.5 years old, to actually telling him that the nanny he's going to leave just for a short while, that she will come back, she's having a baby. I never had that conversation with him. And she said that maybe this is something that is actually bothering him. So her suggestion was, and her advice was, to move him back into my room. Not into my bed, but just back into my room, that he could be with me during the night times, that I can get enough sleep just to be able to actually function normally throughout the day and not constantly being stressed out and being tired. Because we all know if we're tired, we're cranky, we just can't function the way that we are supposed to function. So I went back home with a lot of hope in my heart. I moved him back into our room that night, and he still didn't want to sleep. He was still crying because still being in our room, he wanted me close to him. And I just thought, I don't care anymore what any parent, any mother would say. I picked him up, I brought him back to our bed again. And I think he probably slept there for another 6 months. And it was wonderful. I got sleep, I felt well, and I could function normally again. But in that lowest part of my life, and what I have learned is that we need a community of people. It's very hard, and I understand this because it's hard for me to find true friends and to find friends that has all the answers. We need a community of people that we can go to and ask for help, and usually that would be a church. Going to a church, there's a lot of different people of all ages going through different type of things. Someone within a community will have advice or will have an answer for you. That day really helped me mentally get back, mentally breaking down that belief of, no, my son has to sleep in his own room and he cannot come back to our bedroom or our bed. It just broke down that belief and just made me realize that what is working for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person. And just because people say, don't do this, doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. We should test it out and see what works for us. So he slept there in our bed for another 6 months or 3 months, I can't remember exactly. And then we moved him out again. And yes, it was a whole transition. It was another 2 weeks of trying to get him to sleep in his own room again. But what we did at that time, we brought in an actual bed and not the cot. So it was very exciting for him going to his own bed and not just back into his cot again. And that really helped the transition, making it so much easier. But we should have a community of people that we can go to ask for help. Within a community of people, someone there will have the answer or will have advice. So the thing that I really learned is that sometimes we take advice from people and it is set in stone. Don't let your child sleep in your bed. Don't let your child sleep in your room. No, you have to figure out what is working for you in that time. Life is full of different seasons. So we have to figure out what is working for us during different seasons. And him sleeping with us in our bed really just helped him to not be that clingy anymore. I honestly don't know why, but it worked. I'm not questioning anything. It worked. So having a community of people, it's not necessarily that you have to be close to them. You don't even have to know them on a personal basis. But they are there if you need help. And we should use that community to ask for help. And that is probably the third and most important thing that I learned is not just to go to people and vent about something, but to actually go with the intention, asking for help and asking for advice. Because when you ask for advice or when you say that I need help in this, they will actually listen with another ear. They will listen to actually respond and not just to understand you, because sometimes we need that response. Sometimes we need that advice. A lot of people stay back. They don't want to give you advice because they feel like they just have to listen to you and that's the best way to do it. Therefore, ask for help because then they know they should actually give you advice. So the second lowest part I want to share with you in my life is with my marriage. Me and my husband went through a very difficult time in our marriage. We were just struggling to communicate. We didn't know how to communicate with each other. We didn't know how to fill each other's needs. We didn't know how to make each other happy. We just didn't know how to do marriage. I didn't speak to anyone about it. I didn't say a word to my family or to any of my friends because I was ashamed. I felt like me and my husband had a very good and solid foundation of friendship before we got married and a solid foundation of God within our marriage. But still, we were struggling and I didn't wanted to kind of admit it to myself because if I did, I had to admit that I was failing as a wife because that is really what I felt like. So I kept everything to myself, and we all know that that is the worst thing that you can do because you end up mentally breaking down, because that is exactly what happened to me. I was at work the one day, I don't know what happened, I think we had a disagreement again, and I just mentally broke down. And I went up to one of my colleagues, he was with us in church as well, so he was within our community. So I felt like this was the only person that is a safe space for me that to go to, which is not a friend who would judge my husband because I was afraid of that, and also not a family member who I also thought that might judge my husband or my marriage or me. So I just went up to him, and I knew him and I knew his wife, and they had a wonderful and great marriage. They still do. So I went to him and I just broke down and I just told him, this is where I'm at, this is where my marriage is at, and I don't know what to do. And when I vented, he just kept quiet, listening to everything I had to say. And when he responded, he always responded positively. He never came into any negative agreement with what I was saying. And when I would say something about my husband, he would come up for my husband. He wouldn't agree with the things that I was saying. And in that moment, I realized, wow, this person is believing more in my marriage than I am currently believing in my marriage. So after that, he and his wife invited me and my husband to dinner and took us separately, and they spoke separately to us, like just trying to figure out what is going on within our hearts and within our minds. And then after that, they sat us down together and we just had a kind of a group discussion about me and my husband and how we can do things better. And within that moment, I realized again the importance of having a community to go to and to ask for help, to not just hold everything in, because that will take you to breaking point. And the good thing about having a community and not going to friends or to family members is because this person, my colleague, he was not emotionally involved within my relationship. And with that, I mean with a family member. If I had to go to one of my sisters or my parents, they would take my side, definitely. They would always take my side because they are emotionally involved. They are for me more than they would ever be for anyone else. And that goes to the same with a friend, depending on what type of friend you have. But they would also be kind of emotionally involved and being for you. Whereas someone that is within your community, not really knowing you or your husband on a personal level, they kind of have this outward look on your marriage without any judgment because they don't know you or your husband. So they're unable to judge you. They don't have any emotional attachment to you or your husband, and they just bring in new perspective. I also realized the importance of having a friend or a community member that does not come into negative agreement with you. And what does that look like when I say this? If I had to go to my friend, I have a wonderful friend, and I tell her, my husband is not taking out the trash, it's irritating me, I don't know what to do with him, then a normal response would probably be a person that's like for you and that would come in negative agreement and saying, yes, I hear what you're saying. Why doesn't your husband do it? Why can't he just see that the trash needs emptying? Or they can relate and tell you, it happens with me too. My husband doesn't do it as well. So they come in negative agreement with you. So what does it look like to not come in negative agreement? And this is something that my friend would probably do if I had this problem. I don't have this problem. But my friend would probably tell me something like, I hear what you're saying, but did you actually ask him to take out the trash? Because, you know, men's heads work differently than ours. They are not always working within the kitchen, working with the trash. They don't know it needs emptying. You have to ask your husband. So she would kind of rectify me, bring it back to me and see what I can do to improve this instead of just venting and absolutely getting no advice on how to fix it. Just to explain what that means. So it's important to have someone that does not come into negative agreement with you. And these are the things that I have learned in the lowest moments of my life, and especially within marriage and going through that difficult time, I have learned a lot on how to do marriage. I now know how to do marriage. I don't just have a good marriage, I have a great marriage. I have great communication with my husband. I know exactly how to fill his needs and he knows how to fill mine. I know how to make myself happy and not to just fully put that burden on my husband to make me happy, because that is something that most of us do, because we feel like once we get married, it's their responsibility to make us happy. And if we're unhappy, we kind of just look at them and think, what is my husband doing wrong? Like, why am I not happy? And it's not the truth. I created a free webinar of creating a joyful marriage. So if you want to improve your marriage, even if you're not going through a difficult time, but just learning a couple of things extra about marriage and how you can do it better, then get my free webinar of creating a joyful marriage in the description down below. So after you have subscribed to getting that free webinar, you can check out this next video that also teach you a lot about marriage. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe if you haven't and give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you in the next one.